Good morning, or whatever time of day it is for you right now, and thank you for joining us. I'm guessing that if you're here, you either feel like you're a weirdo, or you deal with a lot of people who seem like weirdos to you. Either way, if you ultimately want to get better at communicating with people who are different than you are in the right place. I'm Jeremy, and I've been called weird many times in my life, and I generally agree. But what I've found, in fact, is that everyone's a weirdo. We all communicate very differently, and once we recognize that, we can find ways to make conversations easier, which is going to help make things better at work, with your family and friends, or any social interaction. I'm glad you are taking this journey with us, so let's get started. Welcome back to How to Talk to Weirdos, where we discuss the differences in the way people communicate. This is episode 11, where we talk about thinking versus feeling. Now, if you've ever taken one of those personality assessments like the Myers Briggs or the LMI Achiever, you'll see that they have one quadrant that is thinking versus feeling. And what that's really referring to is the extent to which we rely on either our emotional side or our rational side when we're making decisions or choosing between two things or multiple things. And we all use both. So think of it as being left or right-handed. I personally am right-handed and I'm a thinking person. But there are plenty of times when I use my left hand. And there are also plenty of times when feelings drive my decisions. So don't think of them as absolutes. Think of them more as tendencies. Now, when I'm making important decisions, very often I'll use a spreadsheet. So I might just make a pro and con list, but sometimes I'll make a list of factors and I'm going to give each one a certain weight, and then I'm going to decide how each of those choices compare on each of the factors. So that sometimes means I'm going to have to make up an equation, and then there will be a final weighted score for each thing. What I will sometimes do is test myself. I will kind of close my eyes and then run the equation. And when I open my eyes, if I'm really disappointed at the answer that the spreadsheet gives me, I do two things. I check and see if there's something missing. Maybe there's a factor that I hadn't thought of the first round and I should maybe add that factor. But the other option is, are my emotions taking over? And if I'm looking for another factor to add, am I doing that because the emotional side of me wants a certain answer and so I'm going to push it that way? Or did I really miss a factor? If I'm not sure, then I'll generally walk away and maybe come at it later on in the day or the next day. And I found that, having a fresh perspective or a fresh look at it a lot of times will help me figure out which one it is. So, using spreadsheets and equations for some of the really important decisions, it's probably a pretty good sign that I'm more in tune with my analytical and thinking side than I am with my feeling side. When making decisions in a group, that can be a challenge for me. And I'm not talking about, having a conflict or a really emotionally charged discussion. I'm really talking about like in a business meeting. If we're having a business meeting to make a decision, it makes me crazy when people are talking about things that are irrelevant. I've realized that a lot of times something that I think is irrelevant is really because they're talking about the feelings around the topic that we're deciding on. So I've recognized that those are important to some people. They're not as important to me. So I let that go, even though to me it seems irrelevant. The thing that really drives me crazy is once a decision is made, the meeting should be over. If we've all decided, we've all agreed, then what are we doing still in the room? But people will stay and they will talk about the decision that we just made. Either they love it and they're going to talk over and over about why they love it and how much they love it, or they really don't love it. They recognize that it's the right answer, but it doesn't make them feel good and they want to talk about that. To me, none of that matters. We've made the decision. We've done the hard work. It's time to move on and go execute whatever the decision is. If it goes on for too long, honestly, I will double check to make sure the decision isn't going to change. And if I know that, I'll find a reason to leave the room. Because frankly, once the decision is made, to me, the discussion should be over. And that can feel cold to a lot of people. In fact, I've got a lot of friends who, if they say something, to make fun of me or are being sarcastic, sometimes they'll say, "You hurt my feeling." And it always makes them laugh. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, I forgot that you had that one." And they recognize that it's not true. I actually feel things very deeply. Two of the differences are, when I feel my feelings, I prefer to do it alone. Part of that's because I'm an introvert. Part of it is because I'm a thinker versus a feeler. The other thing I can do is I can look at things from the outside. So I can see that I have a lot of emotions about some topic, but I can generally look at them from the outside, acknowledge them, but they don't need to necessarily interfere. Going back to that spreadsheet I talked about, there have been times when a decision might affect 4 people, and if the answer is that it's better for 3 of the people and not for 1, that's what I'll go with, even if the 1 is me. I'm able to just step outside, look at it dispassionately, and if the best decision for the most people is not good for me, I'm still okay with that. The third place where this really comes into play is when talking about theoretical things. When I'm talking about theoretical things, all of the emotion comes out of it, and I will just look at it logically. For instance, I love thinking about the zombie apocalypse. If there were a zombie apocalypse, I've got a bug out bag. I like thinking about what should be in it, and I change it up periodically as I get new ideas. The other thing I think about is who would I want in my group? I go with the group of 6. I think that's a manageable number. You could go 8, 10. It's okay. Everybody has a different number. However, the question is, who would you bring? For me, it comes down to, are they durable? I don't want someone who's not going to be able to march a long way or, get hurt easily. Do they have a can-do attitude? Because you're going to run into situations where you've never seen before and you need to figure out what to do. So that attitude's important. Do they have any special skills? Are they really good at hunting? Do they have medical experience? And then generally, are they going to help the team be more cohesive? Some people, just by their nature, really bring people together. Some people are a little bit more divisive. So I want someone who's going to bring people together. One factor that does not enter my mind is the fact that whoever I don't choose in this theory is dead. To me, it's a logical, theoretical exercise, but not everyone can do it. Some people will not play this game with me because they're only going to pick their loved ones because they couldn't leave anybody behind, and they look at me like I'm a monster for just so casually killing off, a big portion of my friends and family just because they wouldn't be good for survival. So when it's theory, for me, it's all logic. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. And you see some really big differences here, and those aren't even really difficult conversations. It's not like you started with a conflict, and still the differences are big. They get way bigger when they are emotionally charged topics or it's a conflict. It's even way more challenging. That's a topic for another episode. We'll get into that. I just wanted to talk about, at a high level, the differences between people who are thinkers and people who are feelers. Next week, we're going to be speaking with Paul Smith about storytelling. So make sure to tune in because you're going to want to hear that one. Thank you for listening to How to Talk to Weirdos. Check out my website at www.jeremydorenspeaks.com or follow us on LinkedIn or Instagram at Jeremy Doran Speaks, where you can get more great content or give feedback on what topics you'd like me to talk about next. Please follow How to Talk to Weirdos on your favorite podcast player to get our latest episodes. Until next week, go talk to some weirdos.